Gleaming university campuses, manicured lawns, and brochures promising a world-class education as a clear pathway to a new life in welcoming country. This was the Canadian dream, a compelling vision shown to hundreds of thousands of ambitious students around the globe. It was a vision that fueled a massive industry, pouring tens of billions of dollars into the Canadian economy. But what happens when that vision collides with the reality on the ground? What happens when the dream meets a dramatic and unexpected challenge? We were told this was the dream, but we came here and found a nightmare. Canada's International Student Program, once a celebrated pillar of its economy and global reputation, is undergoing a dramatic correction. The country that welcomed a record number of students is now deliberately reducing their numbers. For some, the dream has been challenged by a difficult reality. We followed the policy changes and the economic data to reveal why one of the world's most popular study destination is changing course and what the consequences of the decision might be for Canada's future. Just over a year ago, in early 2024, Canada's international student population was at an unprecedented high, with over 1 million study permit holders in the country. That peak, which represented years of explosive growth, now feels like a distant memory. Today, the numbers paint a picture of a system in rapid decline. Between January and August of 2025, new student arrivals plummeted by staggering 132,000 compared to the same period in 24. The total number of students in the country has fallen by over a quarter. So how did we get here? How did a country that built a multi-billion-dollar industry with the help of international students suddenly decide it had too many? The answer lies not in an accident, but in a series of intentional policy changes from the Canadian government designed to regain control over a system it believed was growing at an unsustainable rate. Starting in 2024, the federal government declared its intention to curb what it called unsustainable growth in the temporary resident population. Its primary tool, a series of new rules rolled out in rapid succession, each one designed to make it more difficult to come to Canada, and for some, harder to stay. First, they implemented a national cap, a hard limit on new study permits. For 2026, the government plans to issue permits for only 155,000 new arrivals. To put that in perspective, that represents a nearly 50% drop from the number of new students who came before the cap was introduced. This wasn't a gentle slowdown, it was an application of the emergency brakes. Then came new financial requirements. The government more than doubled the amount of money students needed to have in the bank to prove they could support themselves, raising the requirement from a long-held $10,000 to over $20,635. That change alone made a Canadian education unattainable for thousands of students from middle-class families. The requirement is set to rise again to nearly $23,000 in late 25, ensuring the financial barrier gets even higher. But the change didn't stop there. For those who managed to get in, the path forward became more complex. As of November 24, the government put new restrictions on who could get the vital post-graduation work permit PGWP. Now, eligibility for many college graduates is tied to specific fields of study that meet Canada's labor market needs. And in a major bureaucratic shift, as of May 25, most students who want to change schools must now apply for a brand new study permit from scratch. For many, the message from Ottawa seemed clear. The open door policy had changed. These policies had their intended effect, and then some. While the government set caps on how many students could be approved, the reality on the ground is that approval rates have fallen so low the country won't even come close to hitting them. In the first half of 2025, the study permit approval rate for new application was just over 30%. To put it another way, for every 10 students who applied to study in Canada, 7 were rejected. This has had a significant effect on students from key countries like India. Faced with higher cost, more paperwork, and increased uncertainty, many prospective students are now looking elsewhere. to the UK, Germany, or Australia, countries that are suddenly seen as offering a clearer, more stable path. This rapid shift presents a significant economic challenge for Canada. International students are not just students, they are vital consumers, renters, and part-time workers. In 2022, they contributed nearly 31 billion to Canada's GDP and supported over 246,000 jobs. That contribution was larger than some of Canada's key export industries like wood products. Now, that powerful economic engine is slowing. The impact on Canada's colleges and universities, which had become deeply reliant on high tuition fee from international students, has been severe. We are now seeing hiring freezes, program closures, and cuts to campus services like library hours and academic advising. One survey showed a staggering 82% of Canadian universities reported that their international undergraduate enrollment is lower this year than last. This represents a steep decline that raises questions about the financial stability of some of Canada's most important institutions. The impact is especially sharp for Canada's colleges. Now, facing the brunt of the new restriction, they are staring down a demographic cliff, with graduates leaving faster than new students can replace them. The fallout could also spread beyond the campus. A sharp reduction in student numbers threatens to create gaps in Canada's labour market, especially in skilled trades, healthcare, and early childhood education, the very fields in need of workers. Behind the policy debates and economic statistics are hundreds of thousands of individuals whose lives have been upended. These are young, ambitious people who, along with their families, often saved for years, sold property, or took out their life-saving loans to pursue an education in Canada. They were promised a world-class education and a chance at a better future. Instead, they arrived in a country grappling with a housing crisis and rising living costs, which for some students can mean living in crowded or exploitative situations. They also face the anxiety that the rules could change again at any moment. For students already in Canada, the uncertainty is palpable. They worry about whether their spouse's work permit will remain valid, if they'll be able to get a post-graduation work permit, or if their program will be cut. They are left questioning whether the immense financial and personal sacrifices they made were worth it. For many, the dream of building a life in Canada has been replaced by the feeling that they are seen not as people, but as a number to be reduced. So why would the Canadian government engineer such a dramatic shift? Officials from Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, or IRCC, argue that the growth had become unsustainable. They point to the immense pressure that the rapid increases in temporary residents, including over 1 million students, was putting on housing, healthcare, and other essential services. The government's stated goal is to bring the number of temporary residents down from over 7% to Canada's population to just 5% by 2027. The International Student Program, due to its large volume, was the most direct lever for Ottawa to pull to achieve this target. But there is another layer to this strategy. The government isn't just reducing student numbers, it's being more selective about who it wants to attract. Buried in the new rules are critical exemptions for master's and PhD students who are not subject to the same caps. This indicates a strategic pivot, shifting from a high volume of college and undergraduate students to a smaller, more elite pool of graduate-level talent. Canada is still trying to retain some graduate through pathways to permanent residency. This presents a policy challenge. The government is trying to lure the best and brightest to stay while simultaneously reducing the number of students coming in the first place. Canada is at crossroads, making a pivotal choice with its international student policy. In an effort to solve legitimate domestic problems like the housing crisis, the government has initiated a fundamental recalibration of a program that had become a major economic and social pillar. It is a calculated decision that aims to manage population growth without causing long-term damage to the country's economy, its labor market, and its global reputation. The consequences of this choice are already unfolding. Canadian universities and colleges face new financial pressures and are losing market share to global competitors. At the same time, the policy aims to relieve pressure on services that affect all Canadians. The Great Canadian Student Collapse is a story of competing priorities, difficult trade-offs, and the tension between a country's domestic needs and its global ambitions. The question that remains is a stark one. Is this a necessary correction to an overheated system? Or is it a painful overcorrection with consequences that will be felt for years to come?